Welcome, brave souls, to a chilling journey into the heart of the woods. Today, we're diving into 3 terrifying forest horror stories that will make your spine tingle. Buckle up, for nightmares are guaranteed. And remember, if you dare to return, hit that subscribe button. Now let's venture into the unknown. It was just another ordinary day when I decided to take a hike through the deep, ominous forest behind my house. I thought to myself, a little adventure never hurt anyone, right? I couldn't have been more wrong. As I sauntered into the forest, the air felt heavier. The towering trees seemed to whisper secrets to each other, their leaves rustling in a language I couldn't understand. I could hear the distant cawing of crows, the only sound that dared to break the eerie silence. I shivered, a sense of unease settling in my gut, but I shrugged it off. Just the wind, I mumbled, trying to sound braver than I felt. The forest had an intoxicating allure. The moss-laden trees, the crunch of leaves underfoot, the smell of damp earth was a symphony of pure nature. But something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was as if the forest was holding its breath. As I ventured deeper, the trees grew denser. The light grew dimmer. An unnerving quietness replaced the rustling leaves and cawing crows. The further I went, the more the silence seemed to press against my ears, so thick I could almost taste it. Then I heard it, a low guttural growl. It was distant but clear, echoing through the silence. My heart pounded in my chest like a wild drum, each beat echoing in my ears. I froze, my blood turning to ice. Just a bear, I told myself, although the cold pit in my stomach told me otherwise. I should have turned back, but curiosity, that devilish trait, pushed me deeper. I followed the sound, my footsteps muffled by the blanket of leaves. The growl grew louder, closer, a rumble that seemed to shake the very ground beneath my feet. In the thick of the forest, I found it. A dilapidated cabin swallowed by ivy and time stood like a haunted monument. The growling seemed to emanate from it. My survival instinct screamed at me to run, but I was drawn to the cabin like a moth to a flame. As I stepped inside, the smell hit me first, a nauseating mix of decay and dampness. The cabin was dark, save for a flicker of light that danced on the cabin walls, casting grotesque shadows. I could feel it, the undeniable sensation of being watched. The growling was louder now. It filled the cabin, vibrating through the rotting wooden floor, up my legs into my trembling heart. I turned towards the source of the noise, and there it was. In the corner, hunched and grotesque, a figure. It was shrouded in shadows, but its eyes, 2 glowing embers, bore into me. I could see its chest rise and fall, the rhythm of its ragged breaths matching the growls that filled the air. It was massive, its hunched form still taller than me. Its broad shoulders rose and fell with every growl, muscles rippling under its fur. I could see sharp claws glinting in the low light, matched by the ominous glint of large, sharp teeth. I was paralyzed, my fear rooting me to the spot. The creature's eyes never left mine, its gaze piercing through my very soul, and then it moved, a swift, terrifying motion that ended with it standing on its hind legs, towering over me. It was then that I knew I was prey. I was in its territory, its world. A scream ripped through my throat, the sound echoing across the forest, announcing my fear to the world. Somehow, I found my legs. I ran, the creature's growls echoing in my ears. Branches whipped against my face, roots threatened to trip me, but I ran with the primal need to survive. I didn't dare to look back, the monster's presence looming behind me, the fear of its pursuit pushing me forward. I burst out of the forest, my lungs burning, my heart pounding. I could still hear it. The growl that echoed through the forest, a terrifying symphony that announced the creature's reign. I could still feel its gaze on me, a predator watching its prey escape. That night I lay wide awake, the shadow of the creature etched in my mind. The forest, once a sea of tranquility, was now a terrifying monster itself, its secrets hidden behind a facade of beauty. And I knew I would never see it the same way again, because within its depths, a creature lurked. A creature that had looked into my soul and marked me as its own. I've always loved the forest, its calmness, its raw beauty, but that was before that night, the night that turned my sanctuary into my worst nightmare. It was a typical Friday evening. My buddies Mark and Jake and I decided to go camping. The forest was our usual spot, away from the city noise under the starlit sky. We'd done it countless times before. Only this time it was different. The day started as usual. We hiked, set up our camp, and as the night fell, we sat by the fire trading stories. As the fire crackled and the moon shone brightly above, the forest seemed more alive than ever. A symphony of night creatures sang in the background while the trees swayed gently as if dancing to their tune. Then, the first odd thing happened. The forest fell silent. The nocturnal chorus abruptly stopped, replaced by an eerie stillness. The trees stood frozen, as if holding their breath. I remember feeling a chill, not from the cold, but from the sudden unnatural silence. Mark, who was always the brave one, laughed it off, saying, "Maybe they're afraid of your ghost stories, man." Jake chuckled nervously, while I forced a smile. We decided to turn in, dismissing the silence as a weird coincidence. We retreated to our tents, the crackling fire now the only sound slicing through the silence. I don't know how long I had been asleep when I was jolted awake by a blood-curdling scream. It was Mark. I rushed out, heart pounding, only to see Jake already outside, his face white as a sheet. Mark's tent was empty. We called out for him, our voices echoing through the now sinister forest. Every echo seemed like a cruel mockery of our fear. The only reply was the ominous rustling of leaves, as if the forest was whispering secrets we weren't supposed to hear. With flashlights in our trembling hands, we ventured deeper into the woods, following what we thought were Mark's footprints. The trees towered over us, their shadows dancing grotesquely on the forest floor. The silence was now replaced by an unsettling hum, a low, continuous drone that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. As we moved further, the hum grew louder, making my head spin. I could see it was affecting Jake too. His eyes were wide, and he moved like a man in a trance. Suddenly, he stopped. "Mark is playing a prank on us," he blurted, his voice shaking. "Yeah, that's it. It's a prank." But I knew it wasn't. Mark loved pranks, but he would never go this far. I tried to reason with Jake, but he was already heading back to the campsite. I didn't try to stop him. I couldn't. I had to find Mark. I pushed on, the hum now a roar in my ears. I felt a presence around me, unseen eyes watching me. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to move. Then I saw it. In the flashlight's beam, a dark, hulking figure crouched over something. I froze, my blood turning to ice. The figure slowly turned, and I saw its eyes, gleaming with an unnatural light, staring right at me. I don't remember much after that. I woke up at the edge of the forest, the morning sun blinding me. I stumbled back to the campsite, but there was no sign of Jake, Mark, or the creature. The police searched the forest but found no trace of them. They dismissed my story, attributing it to shock and grief. But I know what I saw. Now I can't help but feel the forest calling me, whispering my name in the breeze, beckoning me to uncover its dark secrets. But I'm afraid of what I might find. Afraid of the forest that was once my refuge. I still love the forest, but now I respect it more. I understand it's not just a sanctuary, it's a realm of the unknown. A world that holds secrets darker than the night sky. It's a world that once you enter, you might never leave. A little past midnight, I sat huddled by the dying embers of my campfire, trying to shake off the creeping chill that was wrapping itself around me. I was deep in the heart of the forest, miles away from civilization. My only companions, the whispering trees and the eerie silence that hung heavy all around. With every rustle of leaves, with every mournful howl of the wind, I could feel my heartbeats quicken, could feel an unnatural fear taking root within me. The forest, a beautiful symphony of life during the day, turned into something different, something sinister when the sun dipped beneath the horizon. The shadows seemed thicker, the moonlight glinting off the dew-soaked leaves a little too harsh. The tall pines and the ancient oaks loomed over me, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, scraping against the star-studded canvas of the night sky. A rustling sound broke the deafening silence, a sound that was too loud, too deliberate to be just the wind. It came from the denser part of the forest where the darkness was absolute. I strained my ears, trying to decipher what could be making that noise. A deer, maybe, or a rabbit, I tried to convince myself. But then the rustling grew louder, closer. I could feel the hair at the back of my neck stand on end. It was a strange feeling, like I was being watched, observed by eyes too many, too ancient. Then came a low growl, guttural and menacing, echoing through the silent woods. It was no deer or rabbit. My heart pounded against my rib cage like a wild drum as I grabbed the little pocket knife I had brought along. The growling stopped abruptly, replaced by an uncanny silence. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, could feel the icy tendrils of fear clutching at my heart. I was trapped, alone and helpless in this monstrous, mocking silence. Suddenly, a scream tore through the silence, a blood-curdling, bone-chilling scream that seemed to come from every direction at once. It was a sound of pure terror, a sound that one could only make when faced with their worst nightmare. I felt my blood turn to ice. That scream, it was human. I was torn between the instinct to run and the urge to help. But before I could decide, I heard it. A slow, deliberate crunching of leaves, inching closer and closer. I could hardly breathe, my mind screaming at me to run, but my body frozen in place. The crunching stopped, replaced by a hushed, ragged breathing. I could feel it. Feel the presence of something otherworldly just a few feet away from me. I held my breath, clenching the knife tighter, praying to every god I knew. I could feel it, the palpable dread, the electric tension in the air, the forest holding its breath with me, waiting. And then it stepped into the moonlight, a hulking, grotesque silhouette against the ghostly white light. It was not human, not animal, a horrifying amalgamation of both. Its eyes glowed a demonic red, its mouth a gaping abyss lined with razor-sharp teeth. A nauseating stench hit me, a mix of rotting flesh and damp earth. I felt bile rise in my throat. It moved towards me, its movements unnaturally smooth, a predator closing in on its prey. I was a deer caught in the headlights, too horrified to even scream. It was the embodiment of my deepest, darkest fears, a creature birthed from the nightmares of mankind. As it reached out a clawed hand towards me, I found my voice, my scream joining the symphony of the night. My vision blurred, the world around me spinning as I staggered backwards, tripping over my own feet. And then everything went black. When I woke up, it was morning. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and the forest was alive with the sounds of life. But the terror of the night still clung to me, a haunting memory that would never fade. The forest, it held secrets. Secrets too dark, too horrifying for mankind to ever comprehend. And I had become a part of that secret, a silent witness to the horrors that lurked in the shadows. The forest had shown me its true face, a face that would haunt me till my dying day. And there you have it, folks. 3 tales from the shadowy depths of the forest that will surely keep you up tonight. If you enjoyed them, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any future frights. Let me know in the comments which story gave you the biggest chills. Have a sweet nightmares.